Hi, my name is Jeff Berry. I'm Director of Publications at TPAN and editor of Positively Aware magazine. I'm also a long-term survivor of HIV, and my pronouns are he, him, and his. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today for Positively Aware's second webinar, Healthy Living with HIV. I'd like to take this moment to thank our sponsor, EMD Serrano, for their support and for making this webinar possible. And just a reminder to folks that this webinar is being recorded and will be available for viewing afterward on our website at positivelyaware.com. During the webinar, we ask that you please be muted and cameras off unless that you're speaking, and you won't be able to see other participants unless the chat feature is open and they post a comment. So. And also a reminder just to please fill out the evaluation form that will be provided in the chat and at the end of the webinar. Next slide, please. Just a little bit about who we are. TPAN is one of the longest running community-based organizations in Chicago for people living with and affected by HIV, and is also publisher of Positively Aware magazine, the leading HIV publication in the US, published by a not-for-profit, TPAN. If you'd like to subscribe to Positively Aware at home or for your organization, or get our PA Update digital newsletter, please go to positivelyaware.com/subscribe. Next slide, please. So we have an hour today, and really jam-packed. There's a lot of good, great presentations and speakers. So I want to get right to it. First, we'll have Exercise for People with HIV by Margaret Danilovich, and then Food Justice for Everyone by Evelyn Figueroa, and Mental Health and Stress Reduction for People Living with HIV. And actually that's the working title. So Nelson will give you his Resilience Tips in Uncertain Times, a Survivor Perspective. And then that'll be followed by a Q&A. So for full bios for all our speakers, they're available on our website at positivelyaware.com/healthy living. So for the for questions, please submit them in the chat, and hopefully at the end we'll get to all of your questions. Next slide, please. So our first presenter is Margaret Danilovich. Margaret is the Senior Director of the Leonard Shanfield Research Institute at CJE Senior Life and an Adjunct Assistant Professor at Northwestern University. Also a contributor to Positively Aware magazine. And so we're really happy to have you here with us today. Welcome, Margaret.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. I'm very excited to talk about the role of exercise for people living with HIV. So my background is as a physical therapist, so I'm really, really excited about the benefits of exercise really for all people, but particularly for the community that is impacted and aging with HIV. So we're going to talk about a few sort of assumptions to lay the framework for our talk today. We know that HIV is really becoming more of a chronic condition. We also know that all bodies, regardless of age, regardless of sex, gender, regardless of anything, all bodies need to move for good health. Whether you are young and healthy, whether you are older and have a number of chronic conditions, all bodies need to move. We also understand that aging with HIV confers these double impacts. So people have to deal with sort of the HIV related impacts on their physical health, but they also need to sort of address some of the aging related changes that occur to our health. And so we do want to acknowledge that people aging with HIV have this sort of double jeopardy where they need to address both of these impactful issues, aging and HIV. And one of the potential sort of treatments and solutions for that is exercise and physical activity. So When we think about the exercise recommendations sort of for the general public, this is recommendations put forward by the American College of Sports Medicine for people 18 to 64 years of age. And the recommendations are that people need to complete 150 minutes of moderately intense physical activity each week. So about 20 minutes a day, getting that heart rate up at a moderate level where you feel like, okay, I'm kind of breaking a sweat, I'm breathing a little heavier, I'm working at a harder intensity than just a light casual stroll. So 150 minutes is your target. In addition, the general public needs to complete 2 days a week or more of muscle strengthening exercises. So resistance exercise, moving your arms and legs against a force to build that muscle. So these are our general recommendations for the public. My apologies here. My slides keep going backwards and then forwards. But so that's our general recommendations. Now, when we think about older adults, we're terming older adults as being that population of people 65 and better. So the guidelines here really are the same. People, regardless of age, 150 minutes of this moderately intense physical activity, 2 or more days of muscle strengthening exercises. Now, what's different for people 65 and above is to add balance exercises if people are at risk for falls. So we know that falls occur with pretty strong frequency in people 65 and above. About 1 in 3 people over the age of 65 will fall each year. So that's why this recommendation of having balance exercises to work on your balance systems is so important, because we know if we can prevent falls, we can prevent hospitalizations, broken limbs, the loss of independence, things that people don't want to deal with in aging. So we want to add those exercises. So the question becomes then, what about people aging or with HIV or people living with HIV? And this comes from a recommendation that was published a couple of years ago. The use of exercise training to reduce the risk of chronic disease is well supported in the literature, and it's likely that people living with HIV, with that assumption that HIV is a chronic condition, likely have those same health benefits. So what does the research sort of support and tell us about exercise for people with HIV? Well, number one, we know it is safe. So there's always a concern that people have as we get older that exercise, particularly more intense activity, might be dangerous. It might cause a broken bone. We might be overly sore. The research does not support that. Exercise is safe. We also have strong evidence that participating in regular exercise, being active, is going to improve your physical health. It's going to improve your mental health. It doesn't appear to impact viral load. This is important because, previously there was sort of this concern that perhaps if you engage in exercise, that actually increases levels of inflammation in your body. And since HIV already sort of increases those levels of inflammation, that might be a concern. But the literature is really saying there's really no impact on CD4 count. There's no impact on viral load. This is a safe activity for people to do. And then last point is that there's some emerging literature, particularly as people are getting older with HIV, that we want to be thinking about brain health. And our guiding principle is what's good for your heart is good for your brain. So if you are exercising, we're getting your heart rate pumping, it's pumping out more blood, that blood is going to your body, it's also going to your brain, and that may actually help preserve or even improve cognitive function as we age. So this is a really exciting finding because it's a single intervention that's going to improve the strength and flexibility and sort of overall levels of endurance in your body, improves your mood and emotions, and may impact your cognitive health. So one of the then questions becomes, well, if this is so good for us, what should we do and how should we actually exercise? And so what we want to think about is this idea of meeting these recommendations of aerobic exercise, of strength exercise, and of balance. So we're going to start with balance exercise. One of the things I see as a physical therapist is often people say, oh, I did my exercises, but I didn't get any better. And when we dig in a little deeper, it's like, well, I did it for a week or two, and then I sort of stopped. And this is a common phenomenon among everybody, that it is hard to change behavior, and maintenance of healthy behaviors is really, really challenging. So what we know from the literature on balance exercise is that you actually need about 50 hours of cumulative practice to improve. So if I think about like doing a balance exercise in a fitness class or at the gym, you might spend maybe 1 or 2 minutes on that exercise. That's not going to be enough of a dosage to actually improve your balance. So the message here is you have to stick with it. 50 hours is sort of our minimum dose to see that change. The second point is the intensity of your balance exercise needs to be challenging. Too often we see people saying, oh, I'm working on a balance exercise. I'm holding on to my kitchen counter and doing an exercise. Well, if you're holding on to things and feeling relatively stable, you're not actually challenging your systems to respond. So the level of intensity should be at a level where you feel slightly unsteady, but still safe, but you feel a little wobbly. So the picture here shows some of the different types of activities that you can consider. So your feet are normally in this sort of position where you're shoulder width apart. You can move them close together. You can stand on one leg. You can close your eyes. You can turn your head. You can stand on sort of unsteady surfaces that you might see, like fitness equipment that's like little cushions or like little balls you can kind of stand on. The whole idea is to challenge your system. So if you're going to practice balance, which you should, you want to think about increasing that challenge and making sure you're getting enough of a dosage. This also goes to support sort of our expectations. If we go in and we say, oh, I've exercised for a month and I don't see any difference, well, make sure that you're getting enough of a dosage. That's really our key component. So what we think then about aerobic exercise is knowing our goal is 150 minutes a week of this moderate intensity. The way that we monitor our moderate intensity is that you could talk but not sing during an activity. You should feel like you're breathing heavy, but you could still have a short conversation. So like right now, you can tell I'm talking, no problems, but if I were to get up and start to jog, I'd still be able to talk, but I would take a few more breaths. I'd be breathing a little more frequently and have those little pauses. I'm breathing heavily, but I can still have that short conversation. The reason you want to get to this moderate intensity level is because the research is clear. The more intense of activity you have, the more health benefits you are going to incur. So something is better than nothing. Light activity is better than nothing, but for the best health benefits, you need to turn up that intensity. As we think about aerobic activity, it can be any type of activity, anything that gets your heart rate up and gets you breathing a little bit more heavy. So dancing, walking, swimming, ice skating, whatever you can think about. Housework can be a form of physical activity to reach these goals of 150 minutes. So, one of the things that might seem overwhelming is, 150 minutes is about 20 minutes a day, but we have research that shows people sit for about 90% of their waking hours. So if we go and we're getting sort of no amount of physical activity per day and then try to go up to 150 minutes per week, it's going to be overwhelming. So our sort of message to people, and what I want to reinforce is, we don't actually need to think about physical activity as like having a meal where you're going out and going to the gym and doing something for 20 or 30 minutes. Think about a movement snack. I wouldn't make a full meal of chips and pretzels and crackers, but after this talk, maybe I'm going to have a few bites of some chips. Maybe later this afternoon, I might have another snack. We want to think about movement in that same way, that having these little brief intervals of activity throughout your day is just as beneficial as attaining 20 minutes at once, because we know that every minute of physical activity is going to count for you. So we've done some research looking at how these sort of movement snacks come to play. And overall, our guidelines for then resistance exercise is that at least twice a week, you're doing these activities that get your muscles working. So you're using weights or resistance bands or body weight. You're moving your limbs against some resistance. You want to do this at a hard to very hard level. You want it to be a challenge. And the reason for this is your body, your muscles needs that intensity to actually build muscle strength. We know that between the ages of 30 and 80, people lose 50% of their strength normally. Now, when we have HIV, when we have another chronic condition, if we have arthritis, if we're inactive, that rate is going to be even greater. And that's why people who are older have difficulties with their activities of daily living, because they don't have those muscles that are strong enough to do the work that they need to do. So push yourself on the resistance exercise. We've done this work on resistance exercise and these concepts of movement snacks. One of our studies looked at just 30 seconds of doing squats and 30 seconds of doing push-ups each day. What we told people was, in that 30 seconds, do as many repetitions as you possibly can. And what we showed was that people, one, they actually do it, and they do it at a much more adherent rate than our traditional forms of exercise, and that people get stronger. So the challenge I have for everyone today is to think about a movement snack. So you can put your hands across your chest, you can push up from a chair and practice this sort of get up from a chair, sit down, get up from a chair, sit down. 30 seconds of that is a great sort of way to get that movement in. And you can count the number of repetitions that you do. What we know from the research is for women, level under 12, and for men, a level under 14 indicates that you might have some muscle strength impairments. You might be more at risk for falls, and that's probably the signal, time to get moving, time to exercise, and maybe even see a physical therapist if you're feeling concerned about your strength and balance. So our take-home message is, you don't really need a gym. You don't need that kind of place to go to exercise. You can effectively engage in exercise and physical activity from the comfort of your home. Doing these sort of movement snacks of push-ups, of squats, is a really powerful way to improve your strength as you're aging. There's also just thinking about walking, getting out and walking as a form of aerobic exercise to achieve that 150 minutes per week of aerobic exercise. There's lots of exercise videos out there on YouTube that are free. Just search for exercise videos for older adults or chair yoga or whatever you like, and just try things out. And then also, just a plug, next week, we're going to be starting an exercise class specifically for people aging with HIV and their allies. Jeff's going to send out some information about that class following the webinar today. But this will be an opportunity to engage in some exercise specifically tailored to the needs of people aging with HIV. So in sum, what we want to do is sit less, move more, and really try to increase that intensity for the optimal benefits. And at the end of the day, to maximize your health as we're aging with HIV, find activities that you enjoy doing. If you enjoy walking, do it. If you enjoy going out and gardening, that can be your physical activity. Find those activities that you enjoy and do them to have the optimal health outcomes. So I've got my email here. I'll drop it in the chat. Thank you so much for the time today to present.
Great. Thank you so much, Margaret, for that really excellent presentation. Movement snack. I will remember that for sure. Movement, I love that. So Again, Margaret's we're gonna send out some information about that Zoom class. So, and she'll put her information in the chat. I want to move on to our next speaker. Evelyn Figueroa. Dr. Figueroa is a champion for health equity and executive co-director for the Figueroa Wu Family Foundation. Dr. Figueroa cares for folks at University of Illinois Health at the Maxwell Street Family Medicine Clinic and at the hospital. Welcome, Dr. Figueroa.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. I think I need to do the share screen thing. So I'm looking for the button. Am I missing it? What did I do with it?
If you hover down towards the bottom of your screen.
Oh, there, I see it. Thank you, thank you. I don't know how I was. Okay, there we go. I did just a few slides. I prefer to talk with pictures. I'm a professor of clinical family and community medicine at the University of Illinois, and I tend to confuse people because besides being a clinical educator in family medicine, I decided with my family to start an anti-poverty organization. And our main project is the Pilsen Food Pantry, which is an open access pantry. So even though I work at the University of Illinois, we give out food to anyone and everyone who needs food. So these are just a couple pictures from the last couple of weeks. And I am very intentional about making sure that you all see how much produce we push out at our food pantry. Food insecurity is this problem with a solution, right? There is, we picked, even though our long-term goal is to do medical respite with our organization, we started with food insecurity and have been building out a community center. And it's about a mile from the clinic where I practice. Prior to COVID, 1 in 5 families were food insecure. And during COVID, that number increased to 1 in 3 families. This is a very big deal. Now, of course, we just heard, we heard from Margaret, who was talking about, who has a degree also in public health, and was talking about the intersection of aging with HIV and with exercise. And it's important for us to think about those intersections all the time. Chicago is a city that has a lot of racial and economic disparities, and it's not surprising that there are racial differences and health condition differences in people that are experiencing food insecurity. So I mentioned before that food insecurity is a problem with a solution, and that's because 30 to 40% of the food that we produce in the United States is thrown away. So we do quite a bit of hustle in our pantry to try to get the right food into the right tummies, and that includes a food delivery program that we instituted last spring during the stay-at-home order. So while we're on intersections, we know that there are race-based differences with someone's risk for acquiring HIV. We also know that if you're thinking about people's priorities, that there are some immediate human needs that folks are going to have to attend to before they can attend to their health. So I have patients all the time that are not able to make it to visits because of transportation issues. So if I don't address their transportation issue, even though that's technically not medicine, it is. It's related to the wellness and how optimized I can help them achieve their health. So, and I'm alluding to social determinants of health, and we all know this, that these are really important factors that contribute to someone's wellness. Now, 5 years ago, I didn't teach that much about social determinants of health, and I had this very big aha moment a few years ago where I realized that a patient of mine that was really struggling as a law student was experiencing homelessness, and it took me forever, and I missed a lot of red flags. I missed that she was a non-traditional student. I missed that she was a single parent. I missed that she traveled for a long time to get to us because I so focused on health and the questions that she would have for her kid when she would come to clinic. So I really, when I missed that with this patient, I made a much stronger effort to ask questions rather than wait for folks to be in crisis. So I always thought I was one of the good guys. I was a super strider for AIDS Walk. I, would donate to anything and everything, and I was missing a lot. And part of that, if you look at the rainbow model up in the upper left, is that and I'm sorry for the quality of the image. It's actually hard to get a good quality image for this. Healthcare services makes up about 20 to 30% of someone's health. So when I'm taking care of someone, for instance, in my clinic with HIV, I'm really trying to figure out what are all the other barriers. I had a patient last week and the week before, and I can't get him to the lab if my life depended on it. And I'm really trying to tease out what are the other issues, because besides just basic human needs that folks are managing when they have HIV, they're also dealing with the tremendous stigma, even if it's just PrEP. There's tremendous stigma, and we know that, right? So there was HIV shaming, now there's PrEP shaming, and it's really important for us as humans to understand that even though this is a disease that people live with just as long as if they didn't have HIV, that their life expectancy is unaffected with access to care, that access to care is affected by so many different factors. So I always teach with Maslow's hierarchy to try to help people understand that if I'm not able to feel good about myself and have the things that I need, I'm not able to practice as a clinician. And if someone is dealing with tremendous stigma, it's going to be really difficult for them to move forward. So I think a lot about, with my patients with HIV, about ensuring that they have access to what they need, but also acknowledging the tremendous stigma, and that even if there are rights like FMLA and things like this, that they may not want to share that with their provider. And although I try very hard to normalize it, I know that the stigma is real. So just besides the usual garden variety social determinants, this is an incredibly marginalized community that is affected disproportionate through earnings, et cetera. So we try to make our pantry as welcoming as possible because of that. We have a medical access closet too that I'm not going to talk about today, but we do a lot of work. And Margaret, you'd be happy to know that we have free physical therapy 2 days a week at the Pilsen Food Pantry. We have a team of 4 physical therapists. So we have medical access closet, we have the Pilsen Food Pantry, and then we also have a clothing program. We really want we understand that sometimes the pantry can't correct for everything that someone needs. So if we can offset the cost in some other way, we're very happy to do it. Now back to that intersection a little bit and who we're affecting. We do an impact survey every year for the Pilsen Food Pantry to see who's been affected most. Last year, of course, during COVID year, and I've been keeping the COVID year data up because I think it's quite remarkable. With COVID, we doubled our output every month from our pantry. So the yellow, the golden bar is our first year of operations in 2018. The blue bar is 2019, and then 2020 is the rust colored bar. And you can see that there are a lot of times where food pantries really make a difference. So you can see a really notable example, the CPS strike, the children's strike that was in the school strike that was towards the end of 2019. Our numbers went up by 30% that month. And then you can see that when we went to the stay-at-home order, the numbers bumped up and they just sort of stayed up for the rest of the year. And we operate still at that capacity. So we service between our food and our clothing program. Clothing's about 100 people a month. We still service 1,500 clients a month. It is very, very busy. And what we know from last year, of course, is that the people that are using the pantry the most, you're confronting a lot of assumptions about folks. So people think that people that get food are people that are unemployed, but it tends to be working poor that are really trying to keep their housing. And so in clinic, I always use it as an example of someone has difficulty affording their food. And they often don't qualify for SNAP because they're too rich for SNAP, but too poor to really afford all the things that they need. I try very hard, besides patient access programs, I try to explain to them that you're sort of like moving money from one bucket to another bucket, so you can use this pantry. But people often complain. They're like, well, I don't like the food at the pantry. I have special needs. We know that people with HIV have higher risk for developing metabolic diseases like diabetes, obesity, high cholesterol, high blood pressure. Well, those are things that are all in common with people that are food insecure too. So for my pantry, that's why I showed you all the pictures of produce at the beginning. We're incredibly intentional about having fresh produce. We're open 5 days a week deliberately. So it's super inconvenient for me to be a pantry director 5 days a week, because I thought this was going to be just like this little food shelf that we were going to put up, but recognize that it needed to be available when people needed it, rather than having something that's only open every 2 weeks. And if you miss it, you lose out. It's, we're open 20 days a month, rain or shine, even with, we moved during COVID and everything, and we still kept operations going. The average person that comes to our food pantry gets 60 to 80 servings of produce every time. And we know that that makes a difference. People choose produce over everything else. If they can, they'll forego the cans. We have 100 million cans. we can go back, because I only have 5 slides. So you can see back here, there's just a ton of cans in the pantry. Like the cans, there are too many cans, but the produce is what we work on, and making sure that people have consistent amounts. And this makes a difference. We know that wound healing is superior in folks who have dietary management, dietary control of their health conditions. We know that rehospitalization for heart failure is lower in folks who have their food insecurity addressed. We know that we reduce someone's risk of developing diabetes by 10% a year if we prevent food insecurity. These are really important things, because we want to make sure that everybody has the same shake as everyone else, and we know that that's not true. So using food as nutrition and other supplements, we have cooking classes, we have a garden, we have all sorts of things at the Pilsen Food Pantry. We really try very, very hard to address it. If you're looking for a food pantry in your community, I would encourage you to go to Feeding America website. It has a pantry locator that you can find. If you literally write pilsenfoodpantry.com, that's our domain. So you can just see us anytime you'd like to, and we're always happy to help. I think that those are all the things I wanted to talk about. I think I'd rather leave time at the end for questions, if that's okay, Jeff.
Wow, thank you so much, Evelyn. So much to unpack here. So yeah, I really want to get to hopefully some questions that even I have. But thank you so much for that. And and I really, you are a powerhouse. I don't know how you do that. Working as a doctor and running a clinic, and then also a food pantry. So hats off to you. So our next speaker is, and then just a reminder to, again, submit your questions in the chat if you want. We'll try to get to all of those at the end of the presentations, or you can hold them for the end. Our final presentation, we have an amazing advocate and friend, Nelson Vergel. Nelson is a 35 plus years long-term HIV cancer survivor, author, lecturer, and leading health advocate. He is the founder of the nonprofits Program for Wellness Restoration and the Body Positive Wellness Center. Welcome, Nelson.
Well, thanks a lot. Can everybody see me? Yes. Thanks, everybody. Really excited. I haven't spoken for T-Pan or for Jeff in probably, I don't know, over 5 years. Used to go to Chicago a lot, so can't wait for everything to open up to go back and visit you guys. You guys have been great. Such a long-standing organization that has survived. They're long-term survivors like us, because funding has been an issue in the HIV world, and they have been able to continue after all these years. So anyways, I'm gonna share, I don't know if you guys can see my slides already. Yes, no? Need some input? Yes, okay. So I'm going to speak about something today that It's not my expertise, I have to say. Where's the view, the speaker view? Let me see if I have here on the speaker view. There you go. Oops. I do the, okay, there you go. Can you guys see my first slide? Yes, good. Well, I only have 15 minutes, so I've already wasted like 5. I'm not used to speaking this in a short term. I usually go for a long time because I'm a talker. So I gotta go through this as quick as I can without being too fast. But I've lived with this disease, like many of us in online right now, for a long time, and we have been hit in many ways with trauma, with loss of friends and families, with all kinds of things, stigma, you name it, and we're here. And for those of us that have survived over 20 years of this virus, we have developed a lot of skills, a lot of resilience, all of us. There's no one that has survived this long that has not developed resilience. That's why we're still here, even with all the challenges we've had. And today's talk is gonna be very basic. I'm usually more into the science of mostly wellness and health and body composition. I'm not here to recommend anything. I'm not a clinician. I'm not a physician. We had a PhD and an MD speak before me. Those are the people you should really take recommendations from, not me. I'm just here to just share some of my thoughts and experiences dealing with depression. I do have a history of depression, very strong history in my family history too. I had a sister that was bipolar and unfortunately committed suicide 4 years ago. And some of us, obviously there's 6 of us, and my mom and my dad, all of us have some sort of depressive and mood disorders that get better and get worse, and they're very cyclic. So I've learned somehow to find ways to stay positive when things don't feel that great. So the symptoms, as most of us know, of depression are poor concentration, loss of joy or pleasure. You just basically stop enjoying the little things that you used to enjoy. I mean, they're basic little things. Even playing in the, working in the garden, even grocery shopping. I love grocery shopping, and when I'm depressed, I don't even feel like doing. Fatigue is very common. Depression or sleep disorders actually is a catch-22 vicious circle there. Withdrawal from friends and family. Some of us like dogs when they're wounded. Most dogs go into a corner and they just lick their wounds. Some of us are that way. I'm that way. I don't like feeling pity from anybody. So I to just withdraw. I say, well, this is gonna pass, deal with it. Let's find ways to deal with it and not really reach out, which is not obviously the best thing to do, but it's natural that some of us don't want to bother others with our issues or our problems. Irritability, lack of coping, getting snappy with our boyfriends, girlfriends, roommates, because we're not coping very well. We have low energy. We're not, cognitively, we're not processing stress that well. We cannot make decisions. So anything that stresses us out, we can get a little snappy with people around us, people that love us and want to help. Suicidal thoughts, that's the extreme of all cases, obviously. Never had one of those, although I really now understand very deeply why somebody would just say, this is just too much for me to be dealing with. I think I'm better off, checking out of this world. And sometimes people think they're doing everybody a favor and not even talk about it. And obviously my family was impacted by that. And suicide is definitely, when you do it, obviously you end your life, but you also can affect people's lives forever. Lack of motivation, that's typical. We, especially people type A plus personalities like me that feel like my ego is attached to productivity, to getting things done, and feeling like weeks go by and I don't feel like doing most of the basic stuff. It's really, really disheartening. Headaches, muscle aches, and upset stomach. Yeah, even the bodies, you start having aches, backaches. There's a strong component, an emotional component to pain. I'm not saying all pain is generated by the mind, but there is a strong component. Weight gain or weight loss. Some of us don't eat, and some of us eat too much. But basically, food becomes the only source of pleasure and that we have. So it could go either way. And difficult sleeping, yes. Either we're sleeping too much, napping too much, or we're waking up in the middle of the night with anxiety or thoughts of fear. Depression and anxiety are two different things, but they go hand in hand in many ways, especially when we are, and some of us, and I've heard it a lot in all my networks, is that some people have anxiety and they don't even know what they're anxious about. That's the worst feeling of all. At least if you know what you're anxious about, you tend to at least know the cause. But not knowing why you're so sad, or why you're so depressed, or why you have anxiety, or why do you have this feeling of doom that something is going to happen, especially now that we're going through the COVID epidemic, which triggered a lot of our trauma. We went through the worst pandemic there is in the century. And there's a lot of triggers that we have. I think a lot of us long-term survivors are living with trauma that is being unresolved and unaddressed. And
Nelson, I'm sorry, this is Jeff. I'm sorry to interrupt. So we're seeing two slides. I think we're seeing the presenter.
Oh, okay. Should I just go? Let me see what it says. See all slides, pen and paper, zoom into the slide. Sorry. It is what it is. I think I'm gonna, sorry about that.
Nelson, I think you need to do a full screen presentation. Is that possible?
Where is that? Sorry.
Hide presenter view, I think, if you hide that.
Yeah, hide presenter view. It was in that same menu that you were just looking at.
Okay, there you go. Is that better? Yes, yes?
Yes. There you go. Perfect, thank you.
I do Zooms all the time, I never get it right. Anyway, so real quick. So yes, this was a survey done in New York with people age 50 and older with HIV, and 56% have been diagnosed with depression, or 31% with mental health issue other than depression, probably anxiety. Post-traumatic stress disorder, 27%, 46% felt down or depressed, 39% felt lonely or isolated 2 weeks prior. And this is before COVID, okay? This is before COVID. I'm sure these numbers will look much worse with COVID. And 25% went 24 hours without interacting with another person, even in New York City. So it is an issue, having isolation, even in cities that big. And this is probably, some people may think this is a cheesy slide. I saved this slide 10 years ago when I first saw it. And I get a lot, obviously, we get a lot of them on Instagram or Facebook. And some of them are just like cheesy or obvious. But this one really spoke to me in the fact is that I presented several times in my lectures. These are 7 cardinal rules of life. Making peace with your past. Some of us are still living in the past and we wish we had done things differently. And obviously that's not serving us. So it may actually screw up the present. So make peace. Somehow we need to find peace with the past, and therapy is the best way to do it, counseling. Speaking to friends is usually not as helpful because they have their own biases. What others think of you is none of your business. And that's really hard to do for some of us that are ego-driven and we need the approval of everybody. Time heals almost everything, give it time. Some of us are very impatient. We want to feel good right away. And we want to grieve fast. There's such a thing as a slowing of grieving. You have to cry your last drop, your last tear. Don't compare your life with others, especially now we're scrolling on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and seeing how wonderful everybody's having a fun time traveling and all this. That's the worst thing for depression because we're all natural, we're all animals, pack animals, comparing ourselves with others. I think everybody should go on a diet of social media, especially if you're depressed or feeling very down. Stop thinking too much. It's all right not to know the answers. Sometimes they come when you least expect it, especially when you're quieter and you're more mindful about things. And that is also hard for me to do, but I remind myself about this. No one is in charge of your happiness. You cannot blame your boyfriend, your girlfriend, because you're not happy. It really is you, and you have to make decisions or get rid of them if they're really making you that unhappy. Smile, you don't own all the problems in the world. smiling to somebody in the store, you can probably be making that person's day better and yours better. So some of us just carry this long face and we wonder why people are not friendly to us when we're trying to get help. This is the hardest challenge for me, to experiment with being compassionate and non-judgmental with myself when I'm reminded of my limitations. This is hard. I've had cancer, I've had a neurological disorder that screwed up my right hand. Obviously, long-term survivor with multi-drug resistance. But this is something I'm learning. I'm 62, and I have to say in the past 3-4 years, every time my self-talk gets into, well, you should be feeling this way, or you look at everybody working harder than you, or exercising more, or your family needs you to actually go, wait a minute, I am not, that's my limitations are, I have limited resources and limitations, be compassionate with myself. And this is extremely true. What screws up most of in life is the picture of our head of how things are supposed to be. That is the main source of sadness in many of us. We always comparing what our dreams used to be 10, 20 when we were kids. We say, oh man, I'm 60 and I thought I was gonna be this or that or have kids or didn't. So going back to those dreams and comparing your present status does not really serve us. And this is what I had to say. I had to say this one. Don't cling to a mistake just because you spend a lot of time making it. Because that's not only true in relationships, it's true in businesses, it's true in jobs that you put a lot of energy in, and some of us will go to death making the same mistake and not letting go because we spend too much time making that mistake. So I'm probably running out of time already as we speak, right? But the first thing when I had cancer, when I had neurological issues, I have all kinds of stuff, I have always to reframe this and what can I learn from this? Am I going to be a friend or an enemy of this situation I'm going through? Suffering comes from being the enemy of your present, of your reality, for not accepting. It's not like we're going to accept our situations. We can do something about them, but befriending it. So that I learned from a book I'm going to show later. Protect your sleep. Without good sleep, there is no way you're going to feel better. There's no way you're going to cope. There's no way you're going to be, it's the best medicine. But most of us are taking our phones and iPads and whatever to the bed and being exposed to blue light, which completely screws up with our melatonin production and our sleep cycle. When you wake up, I do it. I'm not a religious person. I don't believe in God, to be honest with you. So I don't pray, but I do say intentions, what my intention is for the day. I wishing myself a good day and what my intentions are for the day before I get out of bed. That has really helped. I've done it for a few years. And when I don't do it is when I really get in trouble. Make your bed, even if it's really quickly, just start with structure. Yeah, that life is actually, you're taking care of your surroundings. Don't wait to shower when you're working from home, because sometimes the cold water on your face can reset your mood right away. Get dressed, even if you have to work from home. A lot of us are working from home. And if you're feeling depressed or down, being in your pajamas, actually by 4 o'clock will make you even feel worse. Be mindful of TV and social media because they're designed to outrageous and make us feel less than, so that we can buy more products and we can click through those articles. Socialize, even if you can just pick up the phone, get out of the house, at least get some sun, because isolation really affects resilience and depression. If you're able, getting a pet, I have a schnauzer. She's been the best thing, the best medicine for me. Don't avoid unbiased counseling and treatment, psychiatric treatment. There are really good medications out there. I know we hear horrible things, but there are really good ones there. I've taken them many times in my life to make me go through rough times. And counseling now is so much easier to get it. Now that I'm going to show some apps that take insurance and get you to see somebody from the house, from your telephone. Walk at least for 30 minutes every day. There's a step counter you can download on your app. which is free. It's amazing. It really helps. Just stay mindful of the inner chatter. With all of us are going to have inner negative chatter. That's how the ego drives us. All of us, no matter how successful in life you are. And it's about being aware that we're telling ourselves something that is not true, something that we just gives us fear, and something that makes us less than. Just being aware. You don't even have to change the chatter. Some of us really cannot change it. Do something for others without expecting a reward. Get out of your head. If fatigued, you really are fatigued, you may have sleep apnea or hormone deficiencies, get that checked. Be grateful. Just look around at what you have, your hands, your face, you got health. All of us have been surviving this for so long, and we forget, we lose that perspective. Man, we've gone through a war and survived, and here we are. And be good to support staff in clinics and pharmacies. Be good to the front desk, be good to everybody, because those people are your support system in times of need, in times of health challenges. And people help people that are nice to them. Yes, it's everybody's job to help, but I have to say, now that I run my own business and I do customer service, those that approach me with niceness get a lot more from me than those that don't. So that's it. I have some resources. This, the online app through COVID world has exploded. Telemedicine has exploded. It's probably the only good thing we got out of this pandemic. And there are bunches of them that are amazingly well done for counseling, BetterHelp, Teladoc, Talkspace, and most of them take insurance. And you'll be amazed on how good they are. And you know, finding a good counselor is almost like a dating game. It's a matter of trying a few before you decide. This course, this forum saved my life in many ways. I took it in '96, and that's how I was able to create a wellness center, my nonprofit, all the books I wrote, because it really shifted my inner chatter and created possibilities in my head about the stories I tell myself to not be as good as I can be in life. I really highly recommend it. It's called the Landmark Forum. It's in every city. I think they're reopening because after COVID, it's worth every penny. It's 3 days of work in a group setting, and you get a lot out of it. And my favorite book of all times is Eckhart Tolle's New Earth. I read all of this, but this one really spoke to me because he distilled Buddhism, all the religious, and not for a religious person, because I'm not, and really made it simple to understand how to manage our inner chatter, especially when we're putting ourselves down. This is the most exciting thing I have to say of all. We're about to enter a new tsunami in medicine and in psychiatry. It's going to happen within 2 years, where we're going to have the first products approved for PTSD, depression, and anxiety. They're all based on psychedelics. These are all the studies. You can see them through the graph here on psilocybin, which is the active ingredient of mushrooms, of magic mushrooms, MDMA, which is the party drug, ecstasy, LSD, and and ketamine, which is already being done in many clinics already for depression, and very excellent results. So we will, and these are all pharmaceutical-based products. So they will, and these are on the right-hand side. You can see a bunch of lists of companies that are ready, public companies that are getting ready for the explosion that is coming within 2 to 3 years in psychiatry. And that's the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Nelson, for that really, really interesting presentation. I know you said that's not what you normally do, but I've kind of seen a version of that before, and I thought it was so helpful. So I'm glad you were able to do that. We do have a few minutes for some Q&A, and I just want to once again thank our speakers and EMD Serrano as a sponsor for this webinar. I have one question from someone who's wondering if someone can speak to the medical and psychological importance of social connection, especially connection to others living with HIV. I know you touched on that a little, Nelson, in your talk.
I can add one thing, just my own personal experience. Obviously, there are lots of data on isolation and depression and mental health, but the connection with people like you and people that had your experiences is very powerful. And let me tell you why I say so. For me to speak about mostly issues about living along with HIV, and some of us have our own, trauma, and we're still struggling, even though most people assume we're like heroes, fighters, soldiers, because in many ways, I think most of us, and I see my friends that are long-term survivors, are like role models in our families and role models in our world because we are survivors, right? But a lot of us don't like to talk about, especially when we're down, because nobody would get us. The only time I can really talk completely nakedly is to somebody else that has been positive for a while, because I get it that they get it. They get what I'm saying in my particular. They're not going to tell me, "Oh, feel better," or you got everything going for you, Nelson. You should be grateful. Look at all you have. Look at all the friends. Oh, so the connection, so that people can be empathetic with you because they have gone through the same experience, is better than any therapy session that you pay for from somebody. So that common language, common experiences, we all have lost friends, families, we've gone through medical challenges, really connects us. And that's why it's so important. And I'm really concerned that support groups are disappearing around the country because whatever, I'm not going to get into the details, but we need to somehow create and support those long-term survivors or short-term survivors groups, because they really are common experiences that bond us together, and they're amazingly effective when we need help.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that was a great response to that question. And if you have any questions, we'll please put them in the chat. We'll try to get to them. I know Dr. Figueroa, you have to go, but I was really struck by something I read this morning that, there's kind of two different things, but the amount of food insecurity and people either in the world, it was approaching 3 billion in this article that I read, specifically in Peru after COVID, post-COVID, it's, or we're still in COVID, but that, it went from 20 to 30% of the population, and either worrying about the quantity of their food or having to sacrifice either the quantity or the quality. The other part of my question, that wasn't really a question, but I was just struck by that. And then is there, I imagine there's some stigma and shame associated with food insecurity. Could you talk to that a little bit?
Absolutely. So food insecurity is a proxy for poverty. To me, that's how I see it. And for me, I know that health-wise, everyone does better if they have a minimum amount of money, a living income, a flourishing income to live off of. And this is a really important thing for us to think about. Food insecurity tends to not be partisan, which is nice, which is one of the reasons why I didn't mind embarking on it, because I get very different responses when I talk about the homeless work that I do, because there are guilty people that are homeless and innocent people that are homeless, but really I don't see it like that at all. I think everyone should just have somewhere to live, and that we would all be better off that way. So with food, just like with poverty, if you are experiencing food insecurity, there are some real assumptions that people make. For instance, the food obesity paradox. People assume in clinic that if someone is obese, it's because they have excess calories, and it's like they're actually more likely to be food insecure because starchy, shelf-stable things last longer than produce, and then that reaps all these other health consequences. And there's a ton of shame that goes along with that. If patients have to speak out and say that they're food insecure, that's really different than us drawing it out of them and just screening everyone. So you mentioned the USDA two-step questionnaire that talks about what the last year has been like, if they felt like they were going to run out of money for food, or they actually did. And, I mentioned in Chicago, pre-COVID, it was 1 in 5. Then it went up, it peaked at 1 in 3. But nationally, it was over 10% of the population was food insecure in the United States. It was 11 to 12%. And which is quite remarkable, twice as high in Black and Brown populations. And what you get when you volunteer, and I run an advocacy rotation for the medical students and other health profession students, I do a lot of reflections with them, and they're always surprised at what they see. They keep thinking that people that are food insecure are homeless, and they have all these confessions that come from the clients. So the clients say, I never thought I'd be somewhere like this. They'll literally tell them how much money they make a month. And the volunteers are like, we don't want to know that. Like, we trust you. You don't have to prove to us that you can't afford food. You're helping us. We have food that's getting thrown away that's in good condition. We want to give it to you. So we do a lot of work about solidarity and empowerment of our clients, and just letting them know that we're a really welcoming space, because there is a lot of guilt and sense of failure. And certainly in the impact study that we did last year from the pantry, we had way more people that had never, ever used a food pantry that were using it because of all the repercussions of essential working and living paycheck to paycheck.
Thank you so much, Dr. Figueroa. And again, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. I know we're going a little over, so we're going to have to wrap it up. But if any of the presenters had any final thoughts they wanted to share, or I do want to remind everyone to please, if you can, fill out the evaluation form. That's really going to help us, in determining topics for the next webinar, and also just to let us know what you thought of today's presentation. And also, if you want to subscribe to our digital newsletter for latest news and announcements, please go to positivelyaware.com/subscribe. And once again, I do want to thank our sponsor, EMD Serono, for their support and for helping make this webinar possible. And thank everyone here for being here and participating in today's meeting. And also to thank our speakers for their excellent presentation.